Hello out there, and welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Frazier. Tonight's guest, playwright Robert Cooperman, has been involved with theater for many years, both in his native New York City and his current home, Columbus, Ohio. This year, he's had the honor to have his play Instaurito. Did I pronounce that right?
That's right.
And last year, to have his play, The Flower Stand, selected for the New York New Works Theater Festival. The Flower Stand was also produced as a winner of the Midnight Audio Theater script writing competition. His full-length play, Kate and Spence, was produced by the Evolution Theater Company in 2014, and he has had one act performed in New York and Columbus. Most recently, Shut Up, Mr. Mandelbaum, which was a winner of the ETC New Playwrights Festival in 2013. 4 of Robert's short plays have been selected for reading at the Cincinnati Playwrights Initiative this fall. Robert earned his Ph.D. in English with drama as a specialty from the Ohio State University and is an adjunct professor of English and theater at Ohio University Lancaster. He's also the founder and director of Right Theatrics, a nonprofit tax-exempt 501c3 corporation that promotes conservative plays and playwrights. In January 2017, the Stage Right Theatrics Stage Right Theaters offered the Conservative Theater Festival in Columbus, Ohio, which featured 6 plays with conservative themes, including Mr. Cooperman's Drop the Barvie. Aside from his interest in theater, Robert is a connoisseur of parrots and an avid New York Yankees fan. You had me right up until Yankees fan. And he's our guest on the podcast tonight. My co-host, as usual, the dark and gray wizard of history himself, Mr. Eric Smith. How you doing today, Eric?
Good, Matt. How are you?
I'm definitely living the dream. So, special event today, folks. We have an in-studio guest on the microphone live sitting here with us.
Yay.
So we're really looking forward to that. So without further ado, let's kind of get right straight into this. You obviously have taken up the mantle here a little bit on trying to give a voice to conservative ideals in what I would say is probably considered to be an extremely liberal sort of industry, right?
You would say that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would say that. You could say that very easily, yes.
So what possesses someone? I mean, obviously, you've seen a need there, but I mean, to take this kind of on yourself and pursue this.
You know, first of all, I grew up in the theater world, so it's very, very liberal, And one thing I noticed early on was that I'm not like you guys, the theater majors I was with. I am, and this is in the age of Reagan, when Reagan was coming up. Does she give you an idea how old I am? but I was like, I don't get it. I'm so different from you guys. I don't believe what you believe. I don't believe these things about America's place in the world. I don't believe what you believe about, the Constitution, if you indeed believe in the Constitution. So, I started forging my own path early on in college. That I was going to take I was going to take what I believe in. It's not like I was forging a path just to be different. I was different by the nature of the industry, if you will. And I do have to share that I do have a relative. My aunt is Dorothy Rabinowitz of the Wall Street Journal. And she's an editor, and she's a Pulitzer Prize winner, and she is fairly conservative, although I will tell you today, if you mention the name Trump to her, she throws something at you. And she's pretty accurate for an 84-year-old woman. But she is my mother's sister, and she did help me a lot when I was in college, early days in college, because I was torn between, knowing that I felt differently about things, but also I was petrified that Reagan was going to push the nuclear war button. I was petrified. And, this is still the Cold War going on. And I remember running to the newsstand where I worked in Queens. I'm from Queens. And grabbing the New York Times, which today I wouldn't do under any circumstances, but I grabbed the New York Times and looking to see what did the Russians do? Was there any provocation? Are we going to get into a nuclear war? And she kind of talked to me about this and settled my fears. And that
Right.
and that really, I do credit her with being the person who kind of showed me that it's okay to be a conservative and not be in fear.
Right.
So anyway, and then combine that with my love for theater, because I've loved theater for a long time. I've always wanted to write plays. I wrote plays in college. I put on original plays in college when I went to Queens College, the City University of New York, when nobody was putting on original plays, and I did, and kind of started that program going. All of a sudden, playwrights came out of the woodwork when I started putting on plays. But I did a couple plays there, and anyway, so. And as I progressed, I just said, I see what playwrights are writing, and it's not showing what I believe. So I have to figure out a way to be creative and continue in theater and yet be true to myself. Now, you guys can relax because you'll have no time to say anything. Once I get going, this will be the easiest radio gig you ever had.
Looking forward.
Yeah, so sit back, fall asleep, and no, I shouldn't say that. Just the wake up audience.
I have to ask,
Yeah.
when you were younger, growing up, how prevalent was theater or even writing and novels and stuff in your family? Like, were you exposed to that early on?
Only through my aunt, because she was a big deal. At the time she was writing for commentary, and she wrote books and everything. And then
Oh, wow.
a little bit later on, she won a Pulitzer for exposing, if I recall this correctly, there was some kind of a daycare molestation scandal, and she exposed that.
Oh,
And-
that I think we talked about this. That's that daycare center that was like vilified, right? And then
Yeah.
ultimately they found out that these people hadn't done any of this
it.
horrendous
Right,
stuff. It
right.
destroyed their lives.
Yeah, my aunt was on the was helping to expose that this was not true.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, she was also on the forefront of the political correctness movement. She claims that I believe she claims that she had been one of the people to first use that phrase. That I cannot corroborate that, but she's my aunt, and if she said it, I guess it's okay by me.
Yeah.
So only in my aunt. But I will tell you this: being a writer was always something I wanted to be. When I was 7 years old, I asked for a typewriter for my birthday.
Oh, wow.
And I got a white Smith Corona typewriter. I'll never forget. Now, those of you out in the audience, a typewriter is a keyboard that it's not hooked up to a monitor, you see.
And
You actually put the paper in it and then pull it out. And it
an
goes,
anachronistic contraption.
yes, exactly. And it goes ding when it's done,
Right.
on the end of a line. It's wonderful. So, so there really wasn't that. But I fell in love with theater at a very early age. And interestingly enough, I fell in love with theater when I went to see a dress rehearsal of The Marriage of Figaro, an opera, at the Metropolitan Opera House in New York City. We went on a school trip of
How
all
old were
places.
you?
I was third grade. I must have been
Oh, wow.
8.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I was left back. I was 14. No, and
I left back a lot.
yeah, boy, I tell you, I just like that teacher.
These field trips are great.
Yeah, I tell you. So why is that 8-year-old 6'2"? So I went to see that. I absolutely fell in love with the whole mechanics of theater. And so growing up, I mean, I had this interest in theater. It was not in the blood of my brother or my sister. I have an older brother and sister. They were not doing anything with theater. It was I. So and then in high school, I got involved with actually being in the plays. But I always always was writing something. Always wanted to write something. I wrote poetry. I wrote songs. Yeah. Wish the Beatles wouldn't have taken credit for Let It Be. But anyway, so in answer to your question, yeah, it was really just my writing.
Okay.
Now, I do have a musician in the family, for those out there old enough to remember a group called Jay and the Americans, which was a group in the 1960s, had a number of hits, Cara Mia and Come a Little Bit Closer.
Oh, yeah.
And Only in America. That's right. Well, Jay Black is my second cousin, my mother's first cousin, and they were always very close.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, he came to my wedding. Yeah, so that we had a couple of famous people in the family, but I was determined that I was going to try and at least equal their fame, and I think by being here I have. Right.
Oh yeah, well we're definitely putting you right over the top with this, buddy.
This is it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
this is big
Rabinowitz
time.
and Jay
Everyone's
Black.
going to know now.
Right. Anyway, so I started to I did a lot of playwriting, and I was very, very passionate about it. And then I moved to Ohio. I came here in 1991 to get my Ph.D. at the Ohio State University. Don't edit out that pause. It's important that that pause stay in there.
Okay.
Between thee and Ohio State University.
Okay.
And so I was still very much interested in theater, and I specialized in theater classes and things, and I did some local playwriting. I won a contest locally when I first moved here with a one-act play. And then kids came. Yeah, this is a lousy excuse, really, but and they were lousy kids. But no. But kids came, and I kind of just put it aside a little bit. And we developed this weird habit in our house. We like to eat, so I went into the working world, and so I kind of. It's only been over the last 5 years that I picked it up again, and so I started this blog talk radio show called Stage Right. Now, obviously, I have absolutely no originality when it comes to names. Everything is Stage Right. My theater group is Stage Right. That show was Stage Right. One of my kids is Stage Right. So
The dog is Stage
they're
Right.
just Stage Right. Right, Stage Right Junior. I don't want to mix them up with the kid. So anyway,
Chicote stage,
right? Yeah,
stage right.
Right. Chicote is my dog's name, actually. Yes. So so I started getting back into it, and I said, you know what? How am I going to get conservative voice out there? Okay, because look, I'm writing plays. People are not picking them up. Now, it could be that the plays are rotten, but you and I both know that's not it.
That's just not possible.
That's not
right?
possible.
No, of course.
But thematically, they were troublesome to people, and that we know. This is a problem with conservative writers all across the country. So I decided to do this blog talk radio show. I said, that sounds about cool. So I got myself a neat microphone like you guys have here in the studio, and the pop screen like you guys have here in the studio. And I started this, what I would do is, of course, I would do some research on, what I could talk about and stuff. And I found out that this young lady in Philadelphia in 2012 put on something called the Republican Theater Festival. And so I started reading up about her. And she said that she is a progressive, and she really got sick and tired of going to the theater and seeing her point of view reinforced. She said, I want to see something else.
Yeah, there's just nothing challenging or upsetting or radical kind of about it at all anymore, right?
Right. It's preaching to the choir.
Yeah, it's very, very cookie cutter. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So she put on this festival, and it got some notice in Philadelphia. I mean, Philadelphia is a big town. You've heard about it. It's been in all the papers. Mm-hmm. And she was blackballed from a couple of theater groups who won't work with her again.
Wow.
And so I had this show, so I interviewed her. And I called her up, and I said, come on the show. I know it's been a couple of years, but come on the show. So she came on the show, and we talked about it. And she talked about, her disappointment at not being accepted. But she thought, she felt good about doing it. So I said to myself, well, if she's going to do this in Philadelphia, which, look, I mean, for better or worse, it's a left-wing town. What's wrong with trying it in Columbus, Ohio, which is, yes, it has its left-wing enclaves, OSU, but by and large, we're more either middle of the road or leaning right.
Right.
And we are the test market of the world, of the country.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to give this a shot. And so I decided to create my own theater company. I had interviewed a number of the playwrights that were involved with the Republican Theater Festival.
Oh,
Got in touch with them, and we chatted on that. We'd have them on one a week, and I would chat with them. And what I've come to realize very quickly was that there are a great many people with conservative points of view who enjoy the arts and enjoy writing, creative writing.
Yep.
And no one is paying any attention to them, and they don't feel that they have a forum to present their work, and that anybody, even if they send in their work, that anybody's going to look at it seriously. And I wanted to be that forum for them. I wanted to be that company that says, give me your scripts. Let's take a look. At the very least, we can do staged readings. And if you're not familiar with staged readings, it's where the actors have the scripts.
All like in their hands.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And we could do this. We could promote theater from a conservative point of view. And so I chatted with a gentleman who is a very big name in the Columbus theater circle, And he was all for it. He said, I think you've found a niche.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think you found something here. He says, I'd like to help you. And so we arranged that I could use a big theater downtown, and I had a call for plays. And, you put these calls out. Stop me anytime you guys want to say something.
No,
you
you're
put-
fascinated.
Yeah, it is.
Keep
it is.
going.
I'm actually, yeah, I'm listening.
That's the quietest you've been in years. So Eric is a student of mine. So I know this. Right. Later we'll have to talk about your playwriting.
Okay, yeah.
Because that was a great evolution.
Yeah, it meant a lot to me. That
yeah.
was one of the big accomplishments, I think, in college for me.
That's terrific. I'm glad to know that. So I put out a call for playwrights, and when you do this, you basically use social media. And there's a Facebook site that I don't want to plug that playwrights can see what's available out there for them to submit plays. And I put out this thing that there's a conservative theater festival, and this is what I'm looking for, and go to my website. I set up a website. Here are the criteria, and I need you to send me a play, and I also need you to send me your justification for why you think this is a conservative piece, because I'd like the playwright thinking about it too. And boy, was I lambasted.
All bad.
Oh,
Wow.
was I ripped apart, And of course, the things people say is that we were going to put on plays like Triumph of the Will, or I can't remember the name, but the famous 1903 film that depicted the Ku Klux Klan, Birth of a Nation. This is what we were.
So they are
Real
so
intense
the,
stuff.
So the idea then was that it was going to automatically turn into some sort of hate speech type.
Absolutely.
thing.
And in my research for the show that I was doing, the Blog Talk Radio show, you start looking up what people have said about conservative theater, if anything, and of course, people have talked about it not only here but across over the seas in England. And the things they would say are just like you described, which is, what would a conservative play have to offer other than hate and bigotry and homophobia? I'm like scratching my head. This is not what I'm here to offer. I'm not. This New York Jew is not about to join the KKK
Anytime soon.
Anytime soon.
Right.
Let alone support it.
Right. That's well, no. You take a big risk doing things like this. Exposing yourself, putting yourself out there. In a very hostile climate, just as you had described, is that it was, it's predominantly left wing, and they are very, very hostile to any attack, as they see it, on their hegemony. And I'm using words that the left likes to use in college environments.
Oh, yeah.
Their hegemony.
Yeah.
So, but I did it anyway. So I had a call for plays, and I got 38 submissions. And that's about 35 more than I thought I would get.
Wow.
I understand that.
And I actually had people from overseas, too. I had somebody from New Zealand send me a play, but it was in Aborigine. I couldn't read it. No, I'm kidding. But I had all these plays, and so we selected 5, and I knew selfishly that I wanted to do one of my own, which you mentioned in the introduction, which I have to update, by the way, because stuff has happened since then. That was our first Conservative Theater Festival. That went on in January of 2017. We had one night. And the reason we had one night is because that's all I could afford. I'm paying for this myself. I had any other kind of funding. I tried the GoFundMe route, and it got a little bit, but not enough to really make it work. But I wanted to pay my actors and my directors and my playwrights, and have a nice theater, and so we did.
We just had one this year too, right?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
So we did the first one. I think we had about 80 people there that night, which I thought was terrific. And we did some local advertising. I did get some a notice in local papers besides the Columbus Dispatch, but even the local, one of the Lancaster papers, and even through the Ohio University Lancaster newsletter, internal newsletter.
I've seen both of those articles that came up on the search.
Yeah, yep. So, that I considered that a success, and then from what I heard through the grapevine, was that people wanted this again.
Right.
So this past January 26th through the 28th, we had 3 nights of the second annual Conservative Theater Festival.
Oh wow, 3
nights. We had a total of maybe 200 people this time. And
Wow.
that's
I
have to tell you, that is an exponential increase.
Yeah.
But it's also Columbus Theater generally, except unless you're talking about the big Broadway touring companies or some of the other major professional companies in Columbus, they're not getting audiences like this. They're not getting 50 at a clip. We had a 50, 100, and another 50. So it took me an hour, but I figured out by the math it was 200. And that's because I had misplaced my abacus. But they're not getting these kinds of numbers. And we did benefit this year from a lot more of good publicity. We had a full spread in the Dispatch. We were there, weekender section, theater section, and we were on the cover, not the cover picture, but above the fold, a little picture of one of the performers in the shows. We did that. I was on NPR, the WOSU All Sides show. I mean, which is small potatoes compared to this, but I was on that.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I was on Nightly News, Channel 10 in Columbus News.
I seen the news. Yeah, I seen the news clip, and I almost exclusively listen to NPR unless I'm listening to CDs.
Okay.
So
unless you're listening to something else, you're listening to
yeah,
I guess that makes sense.
Exactly. Right? And Fisher, right?
Yeah, but Ann Fisher was not the host.
Okay.
That they have a weekend host that starts at 11 a.m. on Fridays, and that's who I was with. Her name is Claire Roth, and she also does a show. I think she does All Things Considered or something like that.
Yeah.
So so she was on, and they had a whole conversation about conservative theater, and the timing was terrific because it was on the eve of on the morning of my the second annual festival going on. And we pulled in people because of this kind of publicity.
Yeah.
I was also interviewed by a website called thestream.org, and they are a Judeo-Christian website, very interested in what I had to say. And I was interviewed by a Maggie Gallagher, who writes for the National Review Online, and she did a whole interview with me, and it was put out there, and people started to notice. So my mailing list has tripled in size.
Yeah.
It's up to 6 now. No, my mailing list has tripled in size. And donations were coming in, not tremendous, but donations are coming in, and people are writing to me from all across the country, wanting to get me networking with other conservative groups across the country. Mm-hmm. So that's where
it's funny because Eric and I were talking earlier, and politics doesn't mean anything to him at all. Okay, so we're hanging out this morning, and he's like, "So what would conservative theater be?"
Mm-hmm.
And so the way I kind of explained it to him was, I said, "Look, I said the thought that the visceral reaction from people who are on the left-leaning side of the spectrum is probably going to be kind of what you explained earlier. It's going to be hate and bigotry and then all this kind of stuff." I said, but in fact, I said, what it would probably end up being would be stuff about people who live lives that kind of have a bit of a different moral compass, the way that they would go. I said it would be those kind of scenes. It isn't going to, because, and this is kind of what I wanted to get back to you with here is, it just seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it? Because such a large portion of the middle of the country is sort of represented this. It represents their lives and their family and the structure of everything about them is sort of represented this way. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't exist though in entertainment. So when when these people watch theater or they watch television or they listen to the radio or secular or anything, they're not hearing, very rarely are they hearing anything that's reflected back to them that's like, oh, that's how I live my life.
It's something they can identify with.
Yeah.
Right.
Because remember that whole thing when I think it was Whoopi Goldberg when she was talking about when she saw Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek the first time, and she says, "Wow, finally, there's a woman in power that looks like me." Mm-hmm. Okay, well, this is what the same thing that we're talking about here.
I think that's an excellent analogy. Back in the 50s, when they had Father Knows Best, for example, and he would come home in a suit, and the mother would be preparing meals with pearls, and people would say, or Ozzie and Harriet, or any of those shows, and people would say, that's not reflective of me. Those shows are phony because they're not reflective of me and my life. Okay, it's not until Roseanne came along, right, where they said, "Oh, well, that's more like me."
Yeah.
You know, by the way, she turns out to be a supporter of the conservative side, interestingly enough. But so we're saying the same thing. And it's almost as though the conservative is not allowed to say that we have some nerve saying that.
I think you're right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of gone beyond that now, too, because not only it's almost to the point now where no viewpoint, conservative, if you're not towing the line, the tribal line now, and it's a narrow line, then you're on the outside. And it's gotten to the point where, the whole, like, they're eating their own.
They are eating
kind
their
of
own.
situation now where nothing is acceptable because anything could be offensive to some person, someone.
Right. There is no constitutional right against being offended.
Right, exactly.
So
yeah, get over it.
Get over it.
Yeah, get over it.
I think you're right that they are eating their
Life's
own.
a contact sport. You know?
Right.
It just is.
No, it's right. It's what they say, dog eat
dog.
dog.
But you don't have to be a dick, but life's a contact sport. People are going to rub. It happens.
That's right.
You have to challenge ideas. You have to challenge paradigms or nothing ever gets better.
We have raised a generation of eggshell skin people. That you cannot disrupt their world in any way, or somehow you are the problem. We really need to toughen up people, and I'm not saying that we start fights. I'm just saying that we
spirited debate. What the hell ever happened to that?
And turning the other cheek wouldn't hurt either. And steering away before it escalates. Yeah. But I think you're very right that they're eating their own. And I think what happens ultimately, it reaches a point where it starts to come back on them. And you're even seeing now some pushback against the Me Too movement.
Yeah,
because it's not that we don't. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm not speaking exclusively of liberals here. I'm saying that ultra-right conservatives are doing the same thing, too. The ultra-left liberals they're just literally just eating their own on both sides and leaving no air in the room for conversation about anything, it seems like.
Right.
Or someone's pissed.
Right. There's always somebody angry.
Yeah.
Have you found anybody who has said anything to you about having opinions changed about what you guys are doing after being exposed to either a play or the festival?
I would say no. I have not run into anybody like that. What I've run into more often now, and I still consider us in the incipient stages of our development here as a theater group, but what I have found is people saying, "Thank you for being there. Thank you for doing this. And what I have heard is not people changing their minds, but people saying, I'm more apt to come to a show or a play if I feel that it will address some of the things that I believe."
Yeah.
Because what conservatives, the thought is that conservatives don't go to plays. They don't go to theater. They don't read novels. They don't do anything creative. We don't have it in us, which is, of course, I'm living proof that that's just not the case. But that when conservatives go to theater, it's things that are safe. It's things that are big Broadway blockbusters. So you will always pack the house for the Sound of Music,
right?
And things like the Phantom of the Opera. I got to run to that. But they tend to stay away from, unless they have someone in the cast, they tend to stay away from the more experimental, the smaller things, if you will, the things that go on in little black box theaters across the even just the Columbus landscape. And the fact of the matter is, that's what most of the theaters are in Columbus. They are these little black box, independent, self-funding operations, with the exception of the big Cat Goes, and again, the Broadway tours and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to do, one, is I'd like to see the conservative who enjoys theater and enjoys the arts to come out and see it. But I also want to see the progressives come to what we present. I'm really happy when progressives come, because the only way we're ever going to be acknowledged properly is if we are understood. We are told that we must understand the other. That famous other, the marginalized other.
Right.
Well, in my opinion, we have conservatives in the arts who are marginalized. And so we become the other. How about coming to see what we're about?
Yeah,
You know?
these plays are excellent for explaining who they are.
Who they are. Now, I will tell you that when we did the first festival, I chose plays, including my own, that did a lot of mocking of the left side. We did. And, and somebody actually pointed that out in the Q&A after the show. The first festival said, why are your left-wing characters so one-dimensional?
Right.
And at the time I said, and I still believe this, I said, well, we're just beginning. We're just finding our way here. So this is what most of the plays that I got were about. So I chose plays that I thought made good theater, but they may also poke fun at the other side. But the fact of the matter is, we've been made fun of like that for 50 years or more. One night is not going to hurt anybody if we give it back.
Right.
But I did take that to heart. And so when I chose plays this year, we chose plays that present, I believe, a conservative take on culture, on issues, without just making fun of somebody from the left.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not looking to go middle of the road here. I do want to stake out my side, but that doesn't mean I'm not willing to listen. So and I think we got a lot of better reception about that, about the plays themselves, because they weren't just simply mocking that other point of view and making fun of them. My play had people who were, the play that I had written, Drop the Barvie, had people who were kind of confused and about the fluidity of their sexuality. Let's just put it that way. And of course, this caused great consternation among people on the Facebook and social media who had read the play, because the play is out there on a site that you can put your scripts out there, and they were mortified that I would ever do something like this. But the play really wasn't about the something happened there to the sound that scared the life out of me. The play really wasn't about transgender people. It was about something else.
Right.
So,
whatever happened? I mean, when the guys were writing National Lampoon and this kind of stuff, college students were always pushing the edge, always pushing boundaries of everything. Right. What happened to that? Because it's sad that middle-aged dudes like us are the ones that are being controversial. And not that we're being controversial, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, why? It shouldn't be incumbent upon you to press the accepted ideals. That's what the college kids are supposed to be doing that, right? But they're not. What the hell happened?
Well, I think part of the thing is that they are the people who run these administrations at colleges and the professors are by and large the people who grew up in the 60s in Woodstock and things like that, where on the one hand you really wanted to be able to say whatever you wanted to say, right? Berkeley was the home of the free speech movement. But on the other hand, I mean, they just became so sensitive to think why it is. I'm not sure that I know why that happened. We've become a very litigious society too, and I think that part of it is that anybody can sue for anything now. But I don't have a great answer for that. I'm afraid I don't know what changed without really giving it some thought. What happened? But I think we've been slowly going to that kind of a thing. I think that the progressives in this country have put taken an all-out assault against the things that this country has stood for 200 plus years, and that would be the Constitution. You have to understand that when we talk progressives, we are not talking just things that came to light in the 1960s. We're talking about the early 20th century. Woodrow Wilson, for example, was the first progressive, and of course we know Teddy Roosevelt ran as a progressive. But Woodrow Wilson, who was one of the great racists of the American landscape, and who was a believer in eugenics, Woodrow Wilson was a progressive, and that what he meant by that was, and what the progressive movement meant by that was, is that the Constitution, first of all, was a living document. Therefore, it is something that can change with the change in society, or it should be changed.
Well, there's an amendment process.
That's right. The Founding Fathers didn't make it very easy to amend the Constitution.
Right, but it's there.
It's there. That's right. So they understood the need that it might need to change, but it can't change just on a whim. And, it takes years for amendments to go through. And the progressive says that if it's not prohibited in the Constitution, then we can do it. And that's a big difference between people who are originalists to the Constitution and the progressive. The originalist says, look, this is what the federal government can do. This is what the executive branch can do, what the legislative branch can do, and what the judiciary can do. This is what we can do. Okay, and if it doesn't say we can't, if it doesn't say that we can do it, then it goes to the states.
Yeah, the powers not specifically enumerated in the Constitution are left to the states,
left
right?
to the states,
or
right.
If the states don't, then to the people themselves,
That's
the
right.
individuals.
That's right.
That's kind of how the hierarchy
That's how it's
spelled
set
out. Yep.
But not to the progressive. To the progressive, it says the federal government can do it if it doesn't. If the Constitution does not prohibit it, we can do it.
Well, this is a big states' rights debate today.
Absolutely.
And I think that I tend to agree with the idea of states' rights.
Me too.
I like the idea that if you want to live in a very, very socialist kind of, you can go to a state like Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to live in a place where people are allowed to own tigers, you go to Texas.
Yay.
And for a while in Columbus.
Yeah, right. So I kind of like this idea of this giant 50 separate little things that you can kind of pick and choose. Okay, this resonates more with me than that does.
And the people who live in this state.
Yep.
Right? So, the Constitution it really gives very limited power to the federal government.
Absolutely.
Protect us, so we have the armies and the navies and things like that, and allow for the ability of individuals to pursue their life the way they want to.
Yeah,
basically get out of their way.
The only problem I have, and I'm a big fan, I swore an oath to it, defended it, okay? But the only problem I have with it was the 2/3 representation. What was that? With when they ended slavery.
Okay.
Right. And because now there's there's way more citizens per representative than was originally intended as well. So what I mean by this is I feel that it's lost its ability to be as representative as it used to be.
Okay.
And to me, that's something that I think needs to be fixed. So if I could see a change in the Constitution, I would want it to just be more representative.
That's what I was gonna
and I would
ask you,
like
right?
us to actually obey the thing, instead of just ignoring it like we do.
We do.
And I think that those liberties, rights, and powers should be extended to all citizens, period. That there should never be any discussion about a separate class or of individual,
Right. Or the demographics shouldn't matter.
But we see that today. We see that there's a political class. We see that there's a wealthy class, and then there's a working class, and then there's everybody else. There's definitely separations in the way that people get representation in this country.
Get
today.
representation,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, no, I would agree with you that I would love to see more representation. One thing I thought of as I was younger, and I've always believed this, is if I ever ran for office and became the representative of a group of people, when I had to vote in a congressional vote, I would take the poll of the people, and I would go cast the vote for them, even if I disagreed with it. So, for example,
that's what representative government is supposed to be.
That's why we're a representative republic.
That's what's going on, right?
No.
Oh,
No, pretty much the exact opposite, okay, is what's going on. People are voted for because the citizenry think, well, man, maybe I hope this guy will vote the way I really want him to. He said when he was campaigning, and that's not the way it's the exact opposite of it. But that's a matter of ignorance on the part of the voters at large.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's our fault. We've let it get to this point because we just stopped caring about this kind of stuff.
Well, I think we stopped caring about it, but I also think we stopped teaching it. the schools are not. It's not like when even when you and I were in school, where there was a unit on civics.
Yeah, yeah.
And how it worked. In my mother's day, she had to memorize things like the preamble to the Constitution, and she had to memorize the Gettysburg Address. So there was a real vested interest in the way our government works, what powers it has, what it doesn't. And now we've gotten away from that, because if you go to the schools, by and large, they're not teaching that. That's uninteresting to them. They want to teach sexuality and political correctness and putting people into groups. And it's heartbreaking. I mean, I really think the nation could use a good civics lesson on how it works, and then they'd understand your point, which is that these people are elected to represent us and cast the vote of the people.
Right. Because
if we take them away, then it's democracy.
Yeah.
We're too large a place to have democracy. It worked in Athens. I don't mean, in the OU campus. I mean, I don't think it works there.
I don't think it does either. No,
it probably doesn't. But it does work in now. Now you're playing with this. So, but we can't do democracy here because of just the size. It's just so we do have this representational government, and but they don't represent.
But they don't represent.
They don't represent, and that is both. And that is both sides.
But you sort of run into this same idea too, when like what you were saying about as a whole entity of 50 states, everybody should understand at a very fundamental level, at least, how government works, the separate powers, and all this, right? But if you were to have a school district, let's say in San Francisco, that was focused more on gender studies, and that's not necessarily unrepresentative, right, of that demographic of people in that area. So in that kind of way, like if you go to a school out in the Midwest somewhere, they're going to have FFA, Future Farmers of America. They're going to have all this stuff that a school in San Francisco is not going to have in downtown, or a school in maybe New York City or Boston, right? So in a way, though, that stuff that happens in those schools is sort of representative of the demographic of people that go to those schools.
Well, if you're talking about gender studies, for example, that was the example you gave. I mean, what school district does not have both genders? I mean, I guess.
No. And I'm not implying that. Yeah. I'm saying that they take it where they're going to have LGBT days. They're going to have all of this kind of stuff that you're not going to find in the rural Nebraska high school somewhere.
I really have no problem with that.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. However, there's extracurricular education, and then there's the education that we all need to survive.
Yeah.
And I think that the schools feel that let's say the LGBT, just as an example, is more about survival than learning how the Constitution works. And I would say it's just the opposite.
It is, because regardless of what moniker someone puts on their self, they're still a citizen.
Yeah, that's right.
And they need to understand that you have these rights.
That's right.
Period. And that definitely has been lost, man.
Absolutely. And the founding of this country was, of course, a radical act, right? And people need
a revolutionary
act. Yeah, they even had a war by that name, as I understand it. But people don't know this. I watch these YouTube videos of these guys who go out there and they go to college campuses and they say, "Who fought in the Revolutionary War?" And these people say, the North and the South. They'll say China. They'll say Russia. They don't understand where we're coming from, and we have to understand where we're coming from before we know where we're going.
Right.
And if you understand what conditions were like prior to the founding of this country, and then what this country did, what the founders did to create the antithesis of that, then you really understand what we're about. And that's why legal immigrants, who study to be citizens, they understand it more than Americans do. You ask these college kids, and even you ask them, who's the vice president today? And this was true even in the Obama era too. I saw this video. Who's the vice president? They don't know. Who married Kim Kardashian? Oh, well, I know that.
Yeah.
It's just.
So
I
I
blame
always
education
wonder
for
how
a lot
much
of
of that is selectively edited too, where you could just go out and you ask people questions, but you only put the video of the ones that you find that you're like, whoa.
I think you have a point. I tell you the truth, it's kind of like I try not to think about that.
Yeah.
Because by and large, I think it's true. And I do teach.
I agree. By the
college
way,
students.
I find overwhelmingly that the vast majority of people that I come into contact with have little to no understanding of the Bill of Rights or the Constitution in any way. And what terrifies me is how many of them, like me, are former military. And it's like, whoa, you swore an oath to this thing, man. Right. Don't you think you should at least read it? Right. Like at least once? Right. I mean, call me crazy, but
can I do both?
Yeah,
read it and call you crazy.
Yeah.
No,
it wouldn't be the first.
None
person.
of that. Just give me the gun.
It's a sad state of affairs.
I
think. I really do. It's just a sad state of affairs. Our parents' generation was just so much more informed than we are.
Yeah, with less social media and
no social media, really.
Yeah.
And yet
they read.
Yes.
Let's start there.
Art.
Okay. They read. Because why? Because they had to. There was no YouTube. There was you read. If you wanted to know about things, you read about it.
Disappointingly enough, I can't count the number of students that I've talked to that they say, I'm just here to get my C in my degree, and as if the degree equates to a good life or a good job or something, like that's all they need to get through the gateway. And I don't know.
No, the fact of the matter is, I'm not going to be able to quote this directly, so I'll fudge it, but there are certain things. You need to do three things, from what I remember, to make sure you're never in poverty in this country. And one is to get your education, finish your education, and have a stable family. And there was something, I don't remember what they were, these very basic things that we preached years ago as common sense and today are the anathema. And people, you're right. People just feel that getting a degree, that's going to put
check the box.
Check the box.
Yeah.
It does help. Don't get me wrong. It does help.
But if you don't engage in your own learning and your own education, you're not going to be successful with anything that you were taught in your life.
Right. That's right.
Like, you're not going to be able to implement it. It's not going to matter. And you might get a job, but good luck holding on to that job when you prove that you handle that job very much like you've handled everything else.
That's right.
You're willing to put in just the bare minimum amount of effort to get just what you require.
Sometimes I wonder if they're putting in that. I mean, it was just I don't know. It was like a week ago, and the week before that, a professor handed out a handout. It was 2 pages long. And the next week, he asked who read it. Now, I usually sit up at the front of the class, and I've got my hand up.
Right.
And there's like silence. There's silence. So I turn around. I'm the only guy with a hand up. Out of that whole class, I was the only person who read it. And he looks and he says, well, should we keep it to ourselves, or do you want to tell them? I'm like, I think we should probably tell them. They don't seem to know. None of them. And it was no big deal. It was just 2 pages. I mean, like, I don't understand what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I mean, I the classes, I just filled out an interview, and in that interview I said, I've never had a class or a professor that I didn't genuinely enjoy and like, and
definitely you.
Yeah. I mean, and your classes are always so engaging. I mean, sometimes when I'm putting the camera on you, I'm watching you, and I forget to follow you with the camera. Oh, that's right. I'm supposed to be following him.
Well, what Eric? So your listeners know that I teach a class at Ohio University in Lancaster, which we have a number of students with me at the Lancaster campus, and then we have folks in Chillicothe who are we're on like a video hookup, and so Eric's in my class to kind of follow me with the camera and make sure that the folks in Chillicothe are seeing what I need them to see, whether it be
so they're like telecommuting kind of thing.
Yes, which I've always wanted to do. Whatever. Yeah. Except I have to commute from the Columbus area to Lancaster in order to telecommute, which kind of makes no sense.
It sort of defeats the purpose.
It really does. It really does. But I enjoy it a lot. But that goes back to a thing. You say my classes are engaging. I just feel that if you can get people to laugh and have fun and take mental breaks in the middle of the class, I will stop in the middle of the class, and if I remember a story, I'll tell a story. If I want to sing a song, I sing a song. Just anything, but it keeps the brain going. I think so. It's kind of all. There's a method to that madness. It's all about helping students retain what they've learned. And at least be engaged instead of just sitting there dying for 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
It's the engaging that's crucial. I mean, there are professors that will say, say what you want when you think of something, but having a professor directly engage you makes a huge difference because most people won't do it themselves.
Right. I remember when I came to Columbus, I was at Ohio State, and I had a course about restoration literature. I love restoration literature,
No, wait.
You got to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Restoration literature refers to the literature written when Charles II came back from exile in France and retook the monarchy in England. Because prior to that, it was the Puritans who were running England for almost 20 years. Oliver Cromwell, and they had a commonwealth there because they had defeated the King Charles I and killed him. So for about 20 years, the theaters were closed in England. And it was, as you can imagine, it was the Puritan. So take that with all the connotation that Puritanism gives you.
Not a lot of time for creativity.
Right, that's right, that's right. So when finally Cromwell, he dies and his son is defeated, and Charles II comes back from France, not only does he reestablish theater, but he brings in stuff he saw in France. So it's the first time, for example, that we have women on stage. Because he saw that in France.
Right.
Ooh la la. He saw that in France,
J'avais tous femme de toi.
Semper Fidelis. So he...
Me too.
Yeah.
Chili con carne.
Yeah, Chillicothe. This can go on all day. Let's just do word association.
I know, right? Let's just make up words.
Right. I thought we were.
I think so. Either I was having a stroke.
You sound like French.
Having a stroke.
So we...
like, what the hell just happened?
So I love restoration drama. It's very witty. It's a little bawdy, and it's a lot of fun, and a lot of great things came out of restoration drama. So I had this professor who was brilliant. This is a brilliant man. He's well along in his career. And so he had this graduate course in restoration literature, and I was really looking forward to it because I knew this guy was terrific and a wonderful guy if you talk to him on the street. But what he did is he sat down and he took out these dusty yellow legal pads where he had written his first notes about this in 1964. And he sat down and he put his head in his hand and he read the things that were on the legal pad, and that was the class.
Oh.
And if you could get his attention, you could ask a question. But other than that, that was the class. And then when he would give out his midterm and his final, on top of I'll never forget this, on top of the midterm, it said midterm exam. Now, this was 1992 or 3. It said midterm exam, 1971.
Wow.
Yeah. And
blow the dust off.
Really, occasionally we blew the dust off him.
Yeah, someone poke him.
Yeah, it's really a shame because he was a great mind. This guy, but it was sad. It was sad. You can get me off on a whole other tangent about what I think teachers do to students at the college level, let alone the elementary and middle school levels, but in high school. But the college teachers, I think, torture students.
In what way?
Well, first of all, they don't understand. They don't understand that students at that age, the college student, generally are either working or are holding down a really hard class load. Okay, and I have every sympathy for this, having been a student.
Potentially experiencing their first family in a lot of cases.
That's right. Now, I teach at night because I have a full-time job. I teach at night and I teach on weekends. So you do get a number of untraditional students, and they are the hardest working. The adult students, they're coming back. They work during the day. They come back at night. They're parents, and they work for you. They appreciate that. You don't get that as much in the younger students, but hey, it's a generational thing. I was that way too when I was in college, of course. But these students, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
Just professors being really hard on students.
So they overwork these people. And as a result, most students don't get onerous reading assignments done. 2 pages, there's no excuse. But all right, for Wednesday, it's now Monday. For Wednesday's class, I want you to read 74 pages.
Chapter 9 and 11,
9,
and
11,
pages 90 through 98.
That's what it is. That's what it is. And when I was in graduate school, that was the same thing. I had a teacher, I remember for one class, she's having us read hundreds and hundreds of pages. And I wrote on my review, the evaluation of the teacher, I said, for those of us who actually have lives, this is very difficult to do. My figuring was that she was just, she had nothing to do, so she figured nobody else had anything to do. But these students do have things to do. So my kind of philosophy around this is to not overburden them or with onerous reading and all kinds of assignments, because I know intuitively they're not going to, by and large, give my class the kind of attention I would want them to give, because they've got to spread their energies among that heavy course load.
Yeah.
So my theory is to hit them with the main important points and move on.
Yeah.
And having taken your class, I think you excel at that. The 3 plays that we had to read were all very small plays.
Short plays.
Very short, yeah, but they were very meaningful in different ways. Classics in some cases. Well, I mean, all cases, really, but I mean, like, some of them were really old, like Oedipus Rex and stuff.
Yeah, Oedipus Rex. That's an oldie. That's
an oldie, but a goodie.
Yeah, that's even before Restoration.
And
like 2,000 years before Restoration.
Yeah. And then the one textbook by David Ball.
Yes, and the David Ball textbook, which is called Backwards and Forwards, it's a classic text on play analysis and script analysis. And that's what the class Eric's talking about, and I'm teaching that now. The book itself is, I don't know, 35, 40 pages.
Something like that. I got it downstairs. I got all of them downstairs. They're all very thin. Yeah.
And, his chapters are 2 pages. He's got one chapter that's like 6
4 or
pages.
5.
He must have been very verbose that day when he wrote it. But I like that style, because he's giving you what you need to know. He gives you a couple of examples, and he moves on.
Yeah.
And I think that really helps.
Well, and that's
students.
all it seems to take to get the students to writing. Because, like I've noticed in the class I took with you, and then this one that you're doing, they get creative really quick.
Very
I mean,
quick.
once they get that idea and the structure of how this is put together, the creativity's there. You just need to assemble it.
People are very creative, and I students all the time say, are we okay to get off the topic of
Absolutely. No.
Anything you want to talk about.
Welcome to the format of this show.
Right. You can wander around.
Well,
it's fine.
I'm just trying to prove that I know shit.
There you go. That's what this is. No shit cast.
Hey, what a good thing I stumbled into this.
Yeah.
Now, students are very creative, and you see this all the time. You go and teach the writing classes, and I ask them, how do you feel about writing? And I'm terrible at writing. I like to write, but I'm terrible at it.
Yeah.
There's just about every student has some degree of proficiency in writing.
Yeah.
They need to fine tune a little bit. And that comes with practice. Nobody's born knowing how to write perfect sentences and exciting prose,
especially dialogue. Like that's the thing that blew my mind when I took your class, was that my whole conception of writing had either been prose or poetry, right?
Okay.
And so lots of room to explain in, right? But as soon as I started writing in dialogue, there was this economy to my words, because you couldn't just do like they do on Star Trek, where you always get that one guy explaining exactly what's happening with the technology so the viewer understands, right? There's nothing like that.
Right.
So yeah, it was a whole different thing. You had
thing.
the flow and the pacing and the cadence of everything kind of had to fit within a structure that wasn't overwhelming.
Right, but it's because you have to be conscious of the fact that there's people watching this.
Yeah, trying to follow it.
And that, if I remember correctly, now that we get back to your play, the play you wrote, remember we were saying, Eric, it's dense and not. I mean, it's
he's dense.
Oh, no. All right.
I thought you liked this guy.
Let's I think we better take this back.
I had to. I couldn't pass it up. I'm sorry. It was right there.
Listen. I lobbed that up.
Nebulous.
No, but I didn't mean it dense in that way. I meant it
nebulous.
It was so nebulous. It wasn't. It was so compact and concentrated with stuff. And I was telling you, if I recall correctly, loosen it up. take out some of that stuff. You were writing a textbook, and you need to write a play.
Yeah, and being very bizarre and kind of science fiction-y and fantastic.
Yeah, well, that
trying to rein it down into something that people trying to follow
was attainable.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And that was it. Yeah, because you have to understand that there's an audience out there.
You got to meet the audience where they are.
That's right. You have to give something to the audience. You want them, as Ball says, sitting on their edge of on the edge of the seat. Otherwise, because theater is one of those things. It's performance art. If I'm not liking it, I'm getting up and going to get a drink and then going to the bathroom.
Right, not indulgence art, but performance art.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And when I come back, I've missed something. And as a playwright, that's the worst thing in the world. You're getting up in the middle of my play. You're going to come back in the middle of things, and you're not going to know what transpired. And it's not like I can stop the movie on television and say, all right, I'll be right back. I'm going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Why you would say that to your television set is another story. But that, if you want to discuss, psychology, we could do that too.
Oh, I do have a question.
Yes.
About psychology?
No, I don't think so. You know how? I don't think so. I don't know. It could be. You know how they talk about breaking the fourth wall, right?
Yes.
What's the opposite called, where the audience member temporarily participates in the production?
I don't know that it has a name. However, a very famous playwright and theater critic and theater essayist was Bertolt Brecht. I love saying his name. You may remember Brecht. Just has this thing, makes me feel like I'm gargling. Anyway, or choking or something. Anyway, so Brecht was very much the antithesis of, say, the people who believed in the fourth wall. And he said that the actors must engage directly with the audience. And so I don't know that it has a name. He called it the alienation effect. That's what he called it. And what he meant by that not only was that breaking of the fourth wall, he also, ironically enough, didn't want the audience to become too involved with a particular character or the situation. He wanted them to think about the political implications of what's going on stage and not, this character, I love this character, she's so sweet and kind. And he didn't want that. So he would break up scenes that are going in a certain direction. All of a sudden he'd break up and have a song. And he'd shake up the audience's expectation, because what he wanted them to do was think about the issues he was presenting. And he was as progressive as any of them, So he really and communist, and he really wanted them to think about those things. So he never wanted to put that fourth wall up, because he wanted that interaction, but engagement with ideas, not with a character or with a particular actor. That's why he had his actors a lot of times wear masks. In Brechtian theater, because he didn't want to identify with a particular person. He wanted to identify with themes and ideas and things like that. So I don't know. I don't know if there is a name for that.
The reason I
call it not breaking the fourth wall and not breaking the fourth wall. Those are my terms for it.
I was asking because the first play that I ever seen, I seen because I took your class, and I didn't even have a car at that point in time. You picked me up, took me. I think largely because I was sitting beside you, they asked me if I wanted to be in the play as well. Okay. So the first play I ever seen, I was in.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was very surreal that the first play I was experiencing, I was in the play. It was like the opposite of breaking the fourth wall.
Right.
I was reaching into the play instead of the play reaching out to me.
Right.
And then I wandered back into the audience, of course, and watched the rest of it. So
well, that's a whole other situation.
It was really cool, though, man. I still have the little certificate.
What I appreciate about what you did in that class was, besides the fact that I think you grew as a writer and a thinker, at least in terms of stage, is that you were always willing to try something new. You're more of a risk taker, I believe. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you're always willing to try it, and do it positively. Eric is like, yeah, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
You know?
That's how we ended up on the show.
Yeah, pretty much.
I was like, dude, I'd really like to have you on my podcast, like as a permanent. He goes, oh, all right. I'll give it a shot. If I don't like it, I'll just stop.
Well, I mentioned I teach this class, and Eric helps with the computer controls so that Chillicothe can see me, and I can, and the camera is on me and everything. And he says, well, the first day he says, well, I didn't really have much training on this, and we'll just see. I don't really know. I say, Eric, how do we do this? I don't really know, but we'll give it a shot.
Right.
So, but I appreciate that. Let's give it a shot.
And now we got it down.
That's right.
So
That's right. Now he can follow me with the camera. And yeah, it's fun.
It's good production quality, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Gets the spotlight right on you.
that's right. Yeah, we're starting to work on lighting and choreography.
Choreography
Yeah,
would be
that's
next.
right. Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
maybe
we did. We had signs.
That's right.
And we had reveals.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. So I'm trying to make
Ta-da.
it. But it's hard for me because the folks there in Lancaster, they get to see, interact with my craziness. And
They get the live version.
They get the live
yeah.
version. Chillicothe, they have to sit and stare at a screen,
Right.
Yeah.
and it's just different. So I really try to gear a lot of the antics to Chillicothe so they can be as engaged,
Yeah.
as the folks.
And
I
timing's
hope.
difficult given that there's a bit of a delay.
There's a bit of a delay.
Yeah,
it's very.
so that really does make timing difficult.
It does.
Like
It does.
when you drop your briefcase that day, I don't know if anyone even noticed because of that delay. I think
Right.
by the time people looked up, you're
Standing there.
standing up. Like
That was an accidental drop of the briefcase.
Yeah, I don't
That
even know
wasn't
they
one
knew,
of my
though.
one of my ploys to get their attention.
it was just
Yeah.
natural good humor.
Right.
That's funny. I think the first live play I ever saw was Theater in the Round, and it was up in Massachusetts. Jeez, what's the name of that theater? I'd never seen. I thought but it was Scrooge and Charles Dickens, right?
Oh, the Christmas Carol
Christmas
kind of thing?
Carol. Yeah,
Mhm.
it was really good. But I had never seen an actual live stage production.
How old were you?
20.
Really? How interesting.
Yeah, 20. I would say 23. I mean, other than the stuff you do in grade school and high school, and
Right.
that
Where
kind
you
of
have the
thing.
letter
Okay.
T.
Yeah, well, I put that aside as
Right.
but I mean, where someone was actually getting paid
Mm-hmm.
to put on a production, was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. But I had moved in the 90s up to New England.
Okay.
So from that point forward, though, being close to Boston and
Keeps
things
mentioning
like that.
Boston, this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, New York Yankee fan here.
Yeah.
He keeps mentioning Boston.
As I said, you lost me at Yankees fan.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there.
You were tainted there, man. You're the dark side.
Yeah, I had I had season tickets to the Patriots for 14
Did you?
years. So yeah,
Wow.
I was there for most of that, dynasty thing going
Yeah.
down. So
It's another thing.
Which hasn't ended.
yeah, people from here don't understand the rivalry between the Yankees and the Red Sox.
It's not the only thing I don't understand about
It's,
sports.
It's yeah. where's the football bat?
Right.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Oh God! No,
He's out on the goal.
the Yankee
safe.
Boston is that's the rivalry.
That is
I chuckle at this Michigan OSU thing.
They don't even know, do
They
they?
don't know.
They don't know.
It's over old water rights anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Look! I know the peripheral stuff, but not the sports stuff. It's terrible. No, what's the real motivation of this rivalry?
Right.
It can't just be sports, right?
But
No, it's deeper than that.
Yeah.
so as being, someone, I've always been very much into music and seeing live music and things like that, but I never knew that would transcribe, and it does. So that's when I started getting into theater and going to theater and being part of theater. But there's definitely an energy to live theater versus seeing something recorded or televised.
Of course.
It's a whole different experience.
And with the experience that you participate in with the audience,
Yeah.
is
That's right.
a big deal.
That's right. That's one of the first things I impress upon students. We do get theater majors. I'm putting that in air quotes. At OU Lancaster, they have a very nice theater program there. It's well done and is getting better and bigger. But by and large, a lot of those students are, well, I need 3 credits. Well, a theater class, that might be fun, it's something. But you do have to teach people about the vocabulary of theater and the way theater works, just the generalities of theater. And one of them is that theater is something that is dependent upon an audience. There's no need to put on a play if you're not going to do it for somebody. Even one person, you have to have an audience there. And you ask any actor or any stage technician, you do a play on Monday, and it goes one way. You do a play on Tuesday, you do it exactly the same way. It is a completely different experience.
Yep.
Why? Because you have a different group of people in there watching.
That's it. Yep.
And the synergy with those group of people
With
will
those
change.
people. That's right.
Yeah.
And those people can that's what's so fascinating about theater is that those people can change a performance. An actor could say a line on Tuesday and say it a certain way and it gets a big laugh.
Yeah.
Tries it again the same way on Wednesday, doesn't get the laugh. The actor thinks, what did I do wrong? And people in theater and in teaching, too, I have to say, because they're both performance, don't should be. Don't understand that silence does not necessarily mean a lack of engagement.
Yeah.
You know,
could be complete engagement.
Could be complete
enthrallment.
Engagement, right? Maybe they didn't get the joke, or whatever, or were so involved in one aspect of the performance that the joke didn't resonate. But whatever, you know, you get that happen. You have people uproariously laughing, let's say, at the comedy you've put on, and you don't get a good review. And then you get these people who are pretty much silent. I loved it. I loved it. You know, so I always tell actors, you need to work with the synergy of the audience, but don't make judgment calls on what their silence or lack of it means.
Yeah.
Because you don't necessarily know.
The things that I tend to like the most or think the deepest about, I react very passively to. Like if you're expressing something to me and I'm just looking blank, it's probably because I'm thinking deeply about it.
Okay.
And weirdly enough, like when I'm in that state, people ask me if I'm mad.
Mad crazy or mad angry?
Angry.
Like
when I'm thinking about something, they'll ask me if I'm angry about something. I'm like, no.
Right. And this is true for teaching too. You know, you worry that, you know, I'm trying to put on a performance when I teach. Yeah. You know, and if they're not getting into it, then I'm saying, like, and I'm not following my own advice because I'm saying, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing? It may be nothing. They may be saying, I'm listening to you. I hear you. I'm taking notes. I'm paying attention, you know?
It's hard to tell. And so many students are fueled with energy beverages, too. I mean, so it almost blends into a very weird, like they walk around the very strange states.
Their Monster or their Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
Right.
That stuff's the devil, man.
That is,
you got to stay away from that crap.
I can't have it. You know?
I'm a process engineer by trade.
Okay.
So I build plants and processes for companies that stick liquids in bottles. Okay. And you know, Sam Adams, you know, these kinds of
those
places.
kinds of liquids.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I see.
As well as sodas and juices and, you know, they're called hot fill, cold fill, all this stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I've watched, and I'm not going to name the name, an energy beverage being processed. And it takes a special mixer. It's called a high shear mixer. Okay. It's like a blender, like a bar blender. Okay.
Already sounds bad.
All right. So to get the sugar that's in this shit to stay in suspension so it doesn't just separate and sink to the bottom, they run it through a 30 horsepower bar mixer.
Wow.
To hammer this liquid into the sugar and vice versa. Okay. And that's what those energy drinks is made out of. Putting aside all of the other chemicals they dump into it that they have to wear respirators and clothing to handle. That shit is the devil, man. I assume, stay away from that stuff.
I assume when you say they wear clothing, you mean special clothing.
Tyvek, it's called a Tyvek suit.
Okay, I've heard of that. Okay, because the way you said it,
clothing,
I was like, you know, they can't even process in the nude anymore.
No.
They have to wear clothing.
OSHA ruined that.
Yeah,
man. It was awful.
Well, you know, I haven't had caffeine for close to 40 years.
Oh, wow.
Because I was diagnosed when I was in my 20s. I was diagnosed with a heart valve issue. And so I had a sonogram or echocardiogram by this doctor, this cardiologist, years and years ago. And he said, you know, oh, you have this mitral valve prolapse condition, and congratulations, you're pregnant. So anyway, he said, you know, avoid caffeine, and you have to medicate. You have to take antibiotic before you have any dental work.
Yeah.
Or if you have surgery. And I did this for years and years and years. And then in the early 2000s, my older brother had a heart attack. And then my father had a heart attack. Both survived. And I said, you know, I think I'll go to the cardiologist before the heart attack.
Yeah, let's try.
I'm going to try something new. Yeah,
right.
Wow. Try something new.
It's crazy.
So I went to the cardiologist, and he looked at the records, and he says, mitral valve prolapse. And he says, when was that diagnosed? I said, in the 90s, early 90s. He says, okay. He says, I'm going to do a test. And he did whatever he did, and he came back. He says, nobody knew how to diagnose it back then. You do not have it. So... But because I've never had caffeine, because of that, I don't enjoy caffeine. Now, the reason I tell this is because by trade, I'm also a trainer, and not physical. And if anybody saw me, you'll know that's for sure.
Shredded.
Yeah. So, but I do training, soft skills and technical training and things like that. And so I was teaching this class, and we took a break, and I said to the person who was assisting me, I said, please go, I'm so parched. Please go out here's some money. Go and get to the vending machine. Just get me a can of soda. She comes back with Mountain Dew.
Oh boy!
I was so thirsty. I had to drink a little of it. I spent the rest of the time swinging from the chandelier.
Yeah.
Because I was like, But so I always tell that story. Yeah, that stuff gets me shakes reading the label.
Yeah.
I'm trying to cut out caffeine, but I'm not doing good at it. I love coffee.
Well, I drink decaf.
Yeah, well, that's what he was telling me too, and
it's a logical response.
Yeah. I don't know.
No,
it's not governed by any of my logic circuits. So
well,
apparently
those circuits need
Well, I changed my whole diet, and I changed. I cut out drinking everything but coffee and water, and started eating pretty much virtually no red meat. And so I've dropped I don't know, about 30 pounds.
Did you?
Yeah.
I'm so envious.
It's
overweight.
a divorce diet, so
whatever.
Hey, it took some shattering to be done.
I don't want to say anything, but I might be willing to try that.
Right, exactly.
But no, I have gotten so gigantic. I know it's not a show about my weight, but I have gotten so gigantic. I was telling people I was standing alone the other day, and a cop told me to break it up. That's how gigantic I have become.
Not in public.
Yeah, right. Really. So I've become so big. Anyway.
Exercise. That's what everyone's telling me.
No, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do some exercise.
I'm going to start off very slow.
Mental exercises that I do every day.
Right. Those don't seem to help the body, though.
No.
But spring's coming. And there's a lot of nice places to walk around here.
Yeah, I try to do a lot of walking. Yeah,
the campus and stuff.
So what? So how did
turned into a self-help?
How did students jacked up on energy drinks? What was that about again?
I have no idea. For that, I was just saying that their attention span when it comes to how they're engaged and stuff like that nature. Right. Their attention span is such that if you're not actively, energetically engaging them, that they're not going to be engaged at all, because they're being wired with those drinks. Their pulse is like da 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 da. So you kind of have to keep at them. If you start having this incredibly monotone sentence moving from topic to topic with no chance to interrupt, being very hypnotic, it's like that.
They're gone.
Right.
I think it's that, but I also think that. I'm looking at my kids, that they are so inundated with information. They're taking on 3 to 5 streams of information at any given time. Right. And whether it's the internet, television, text messaging, all of these different mediums are always coming at them at once. And it's creepy. Like my son used to sit in class and the teachers thought he wasn't paying attention, but if they asked him a question, he could just repeat back everything they said, even though he wasn't looking at them. So I think it's some of that too. Like there's definitely the culture's evolved, and the way we interact and communicate with each other is evolving, and we're all having a terrible time with it right now.
I think that's true, but I do think that there is a recognition that people learn in different ways. And it's no longer the case that if you are sitting there in a classroom situation or in a training situation and you're doodling, which I'm a big doodler, that doesn't mean I'm not paying attention. Yeah. A lot of, I do, as I say, corporate training and training in the public sector. And what a lot of the trainers do is they bring toys and they throw them down on the desk and the table, and people pick them up and are playing with them. And that's supposed to, really the theory is that these are what they call kinesthetic learners, and that they are, they learn while holding and touching and doing. But I think the literature has been out for a while on that people do, you have to understand that people are not going to sit there with their hands clasped and just sit up straight and watch the teacher
and absorb everything you're saying, and keeping their mind on the subject matter.
Right. So when I'm teaching, although I don't like when people are sitting there on the cell phones, and I tell them not to do that, put their cell phones away. And some students bring laptops, which I just don't always trust. You know, that they're not on Facebook. You know, boy, this guy's an idiot, and I'm in his class. But by and large, I'm not that worried if a student's looking off or looking out the window or drawing or doing something like that, because I know that that's his or her way of, you know, maybe it's his or her way of learning. You know, goodness knows, I'm doing all kinds of nutty stuff up there.
Or bleeding off excess energy that they, you know, that they couldn't bleed off and pay attention to without.
Right. So I'm okay with that.
What current projects do you have going on, or near future projects that you're working on?
Let me tell you a couple of things. So first of all, one of the things that wasn't on your list there was that in July, this past July, we put on a play called The Anarchist by David Mamet. Now, David Mamet is a very, very well-known American playwright since the early to mid-'70s. He's one of the major screenwriters in America. This is if you have to name who's the best living playwright in America today, arguably you will get David Mamet's name. You know, so he in 2008 he wrote an article for the Village Voice, and he said, and it is entitled "Why I Am No Longer a Brain Dead Liberal." And this shook up the theater world a little bit. And, of course, the commentary that came out that he went to the dark side. He came out and said, look, I'm a conservative. Here's what I believe, etc. So my thought was this is perfect fodder for some production by Stage Right Theatrics. So in July, we got the rights to do a play called The Anarchist. It was from 2012. And it's two women. It's a prison setting. One is an inmate. She was an anarchist. She had killed policemen, and she's looking to get out of jail. And the other is kind of the parole officer who is interrogating her. And I did this because I wanted people to see a Mamet production that was post-2008. And you know, people are aware of Mamet's plays from before 2008. Glengarry Glen Ross, which of course became a well-known movie, right? An American Buffalo.
And Coffees for Closers, right?
Right, that's right. Always be closing.
Yeah,
Right, that's right. So all that stuff is very, very well known. The post-2008 stuff is less well-known. Why? Because he's not getting the kind of reaction he used to get. Yeah. You know, people are... Look, he's produced all over, so it's not like he lost productions, but they're producing American Buffalo. They're producing Glengarry Glen Ross. They're even producing Oleana, which is prior to 2008 by many years. Oleana was a politically incorrect play about a male professor who was accused of harassment by a female student. And this is the early years of political correctness and the awareness of that. And of course, Mamet kind of came down on the side of the teacher. So there has been an evolution toward his coming out of the political closet, so to speak. But I wanted people to see something other than these classic Mamet pieces. Yeah. Nice. So we got the rights, and it's a long one-act play. And we had a Mamet scholar come in, and before each production, I was able to muster 2 productions this time, 2 performances, because I could afford a little more, and I got some funding from the Greater Columbus Arts Council to do this. Yeah, they also funded the second annual Conservative Theater Festival. And so we had this scholar come in, and he talked about Mamet's conservatism and his kind of almost religious approach to life. He actually entitled it, or the main theme of his work, of his talk, was Mamet is a modern day prophet. And it was fascinating. And it really helped, and audience members said this too, that it really helped understand the anarchist, because Mamet is now writing, at least through the anarchist, in a much more complex way. It used to be that Mamet was the F-bomb thrower. You know, Mamet was, that's where you would go to get an education in 4-letter words, was you watch the David Mamet play, and it was F this and F that and FF, you know, the one character named Teach. Am I allowed to say these words?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like Teach? No.
Yeah.
So the character named Teach in American Buffalo, I played it in college. I find that hard to believe. He's kind of a scruffy character. And his opening line is, fucking Ruthie, fucking Ruthie, fucking Ruthie, fucking Ruthie. He just says that like 5 times. This is typical Mamet. Okay. Anarchist, you know, may have had a blue word here or there, but he's writing from a much more complex psychological and even religious perspective now. So this guy, Paul Patton was his name, and he teaches at Spring Arbor University in that state up north. As they say, right?
The one that looks like a hand.
The one that looks like a hand, right? Right. He came and talked about it very passionately, about his love of Mamet and what Mamet's trying to do. And the audience members said, "My God, the play." One person said to me, "This play gives me a headache, but it's because I have to think a lot."
Yeah.
You know, so he helped do that. And one of the things I would like to do with my theater company is not only entertain, but to educate.
Yeah.
You know, so I even had, before the show, people could pick up a copy of Mamet's article, Why I Was No Longer a Brain Dead Liberal, so they could look at it and see where he was coming from. So that was very exciting. So we did that in July. And then this coming July, we're going to be putting on a play called Ferguson, Truth Matters, by Phelim McAleer, who's an Irish playwright. Now, this play came to my attention. Actually, I'd heard about it because I think National Review may have done a piece about it. It was produced in L.A., and of course, actors, when they first started rehearsing it, were quitting left and right, because what it is it's a look. He took the transcripts from the Ferguson, Missouri trials, and he put it together in such a way, and this is a kind of a new genre called transcript drama, and he put it together in such a way that it is pro-police, okay? And so they had actors and they had protests, you know, all the wonderful things that come with putting on controversial theater. So the play was then produced in New York City, and I get a call from the Wall Street Journal. And it wasn't my aunt. You know? And I was like, well, it was the drama guy from the Wall Street Journal, not the drama critic, but a guy who reports on drama in New York. And he said, you know, this is considered kind of a conservative piece and has a conservative point of view. And I decided to see if there was any conservative theater groups out there. And I Googled it, and your name came up. I said, right, because we're about it.
Right.
And so he asked me some questions about conservative theater and things like that. And naturally, my commentary, as your listeners will attest to, ran too long. And I wasn't in that Wall Street Journal article. However, it was through this gentleman at the Wall Street Journal. I said, you know, this would be a play I should do. We should see about getting the rights to this play. So he helped me get in touch with the playwright, who was very, very gracious. We actually hooked up via Twitter. And he says, I'd be delighted to have you do my play. I'm sure he said it with an Irish accent, but I didn't talk to him directly. And so he got me in touch with his production person. And what I found out was that in L.A. and in New York, they had their own production company come to the theater and put on the play.
Okay.
And she said to me with kind of an incredulous tone, she says, you mean you want to produce the play yourself and just have us give you the rights? And I said, yeah, isn't that the way it works?
Yeah.
You know, it's the way it works usually. She says, okay, I'll talk to Phelim. She says, and I'll see what we can do. And then right after Thanksgiving, she called, she says, he says yes.
Yeah.
He said, you can do it. So I'm working on, you know, solidifying my director and what we're going to do. But in July, we're going to have a weekend of doing Ferguson. And I'm going to start now marketing this, you know, and I'm going to reach out to groups like the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police, and see if they, you know, I'll give them discounted tickets. And we'll try and get people coming to see this. And this is, everywhere this play has gone, it has been controversial. Nothing wrong with controversy. Theater has been controversial and about attacking the status quo since the days of the Greeks. So I'm looking forward to the response to this.
It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be interesting, yeah. And, you know, I don't know that we'll get any protesters. I've always been concerned that we would at the Conservative Festival, and we never did. But my feeling is, hey, I can use the publicity.
Now, will you be doing this in Columbus or?
Oh
New York?
yeah, no, in Columbus.
In
Columbus,
Columbus,
we
yeah.
would with, as far as I know, and I could be very wrong about this. It's been done in L.A. It's been done in New York, and then there's us.
Yeah.
There is we. Excuse me, English teacher. I should know that. There is we. So yeah, it's going to be done at the Shed Theater in Columbus on Franklin Avenue in downtown Columbus. Get your tickets now. No, it's not available yet. But it is. This is where we do our productions. You know, we just get that theater, and it's. I'm looking forward to it being a very big deal, and let it. You know, we're not there just to tweak the other side. We're there to present another side.
Yeah.
And say, let's discuss it.
Yeah.
And I always have Q&As after my performances.
That's nice.
So let's talk about
Well,
it.
and anytime you deal with controversial subjects, I think it's very easy to be derivative, isn't it? It's very easy to be kind of take the low hanging fruit and kind of sort of. It's another thing though to be provocative, thoughtful, poignant. You know, thought provoking, these kinds of things, and that takes a lot more effort.
All in an
gonna take a lot
entertaining
of
rapper.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's right. That's right, because we're always looking to entertain.
That's why. That's why in when you look at when it's done in mainstream, I want to say liberal, but
Mainstream
media,
liberal
but
media.
that's just media. You know, I mean, that's the playground that everybody plays in, right?
Right.
The tendency is to always go for the hayseed kind of character.
Yes.
And I find all that to be just really just so low ball.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know, if you want to make fun of somebody from the Midwest or somebody from the South or something like that, there's a lot better ways you can make fun of them than that.
Right.
Okay. And I don't mind you making fun of, you know, people that I associate with maybe or others, but that's not the point. You know, it's just that it just seems so lowbrow all the time.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
You got to quit hanging out with cavemen.
Well, yeah, I'm not talking about you.
There's a writer. There's a writer out there who he does a lot of LGBT plays, you know, and he's got this play. I mean, he's a well-known writer, so it's not like I'm you know, pointing out somebody who's going to now, oh my God, I'm out of the closet. Rich Olaf is his name, and he's written a number of plays that have been produced around Columbus, and he's well-known playwright. So I went to see one of his plays a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it was about this hotel in Florida that caters to the sexually strange and also LGBT and things like that. And this couple comes, and of course they're from Ohio. And of course they are provincial, and they're hayseeds, and they have points of view that are, you know, could be seen to be, you know, backwards in time and things like that. And it was about having to educate these people. And of course the wife, she gets educated right away. She's joining in on the orgies in room 602, you know. But the husband, of course, is solid and, you know, a staunch conservative type of person. And that bothered me.
Was it the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Well, yeah, you know, you make
I'm sitting here going, I've seen this.
That's a very good point. That is a good point. Damn it, Janet.
Right?
So, yeah, I saw that once in my life. That was all I needed to watch. I couldn't see the screen because people were standing on stage mouthing the lyrics.
Yeah. I've been several times.
Yeah.
I have to admit. Oh,
Wow. So, well, you know, look, it's just another day in New York.
Yeah. Right.
But I did find it very troubling, and I remember interviewing the director on my ill-fated podcast, and I interviewed the director, and he said, or he may have just been the producer, whatever, he said, well, I think you're being too sensitive. I'm being too sensitive?
Yeah.
You know? I'm not ready to shut the theater down because of this.
Yeah.
You know? So you're absolutely right. There is that perception that we are, you know, the conservatives are just, you know, get my gun and let's go out hunting. I'm from New York City. We don't talk that way.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we get the gun, but we're just chasing the mugger
you
down the
doing?
street. Right, how you doing? Yeah,
How's your
check
mother?
that.
How you
That's right.
doing over there?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, how's your mother? Your
I
father
have
working?
seen though. I think Netflix has been doing it. There are some people that are sort of portraying that kind of stuff. Ashton Kutcher is doing that. The Ranch, which kind of does a pretty good job of following a ranching family and the kind of things that they have to deal with. So I've seen it like there's a new sitcom called Young Sheldon where because his character's supposed to be from like Texas and he's this astrophysicist, so he's always like shunning his family. But it goes back in time to how he was actually raised, kind of thing. And they present these people in a very positive light.
That's good to know.
So it's starting to happen, but
Good.
I think it kind of has to because hasn't the reality TV, Big Brother kind of thing sort of already started playing itself out
played
anyway?
its course. It has played its course. You know, there was that show. I'm sorry.
People want shit with substance now.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
like,
That's a very healthy thing.
Yeah.
But if I remember there was a few years ago, there was that show about that little model from Texas, I think.
Honey Boo Boo.
Honey Boo Boo.
Oh,
that was the rage. And I remember making the mistake of putting the show on one day just to see what I was going to see. And I said to myself, you know, they are using people like this. The producers are putting this on, not because they're genuinely interested in this little girl. It's because they want to show how backwards these people who live in flyover states are. You know, I remember that. And I think you're right. I think it has played its course totally. And I think it is very healthy that people do want substance. And I agree with you. The problem is it's always a pendulum.
Yeah.
You know, and so at some point we'll be sitting here talking about how, you know, people they don't want substance anymore.
They just want a good time.
They want bizarre and
something
exaggerated
weird
reality.
That's right. That's right. That's
where people's fate is held in the hand of one person that we all watch.
Well, I'll tell you something. You bring up television. I don't watch a lot of television. I really don't. I like Mysteries at the Museum because it's factual and interesting.
I dig that show.
I like that show.
But I also like Ancient Aliens.
I've watched that. I've watched that. The guy with the hair.
Oh yeah, Giorgio Tsoukalos.
It's funny how both of you knew that. I just knew he was the guy with the hair.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
Right. You know, I like things like bizarre foods.
Yeah.
Because even though
Andrew
I'm a conservative,
Zimmerman,
I like other cultures. So anyway, I don't watch a lot of television, but what my children, who are now adults, they grew up watching classic television because I think it's just came from a better place. It came from a better era. It came from better writing. Now, don't get me started on writing, but I'm actually working to ask me about projects. I think about 3 hours ago you asked that, and I'm working on a short piece, kind of like a David Ball-sized book, if you will, or essay called Bad Playwriting, and how to recognize what I consider to be really bad playwriting. And I think the majority of playwriting out there is terrible, because I think playwrights have been perverted by Saturday Night Live and those meaningless, sex-driven sitcoms. And you look, as you had read in the introduction, I was involved in 2 major playwriting festivals in New York City. And I saw the plays that were in competition with mine. And they were all these 15-minute Saturday Night Live sketches about sex. And it was, you know, I start to see this again and again. So in this book, I'm pointing out, and one of the things I point out is that the golden age of television gave the audience a lot more credit for being intelligent.
Yeah.
You didn't see those kinds of saying, maybe, yes, they weren't allowed, but still they weren't allowed for a reason. And you didn't rely on that kind of lowest common denominator humor.
Yeah.
You know, so you will find me quoting.
I don't know why people don't feel more insulted by that kind of stuff. I mean, no matter what it is, right? No matter, and you, like I said, you've seen it. You know, you can see it both ways too. Okay, you know, the snowflakes and everybody. You know, is a snowflake and their so I get it, right? But that's not people.
That's right.
In general, it's just not.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know why more people don't go, God, this is just insulting. Why am I even listening?
I have been in music. I really dislike purchasing an album that's using like nudity on it because I don't feel like that's got anything to do with sound.
Got it.
Right? You
I
know,
got
like
what you
what's
mean.
the point?
Right.
Yeah, there's no point in me and like you say, it's the lowest common
Lowest
denominator.
common denominator.
And I don't want to buy into that. I don't want this guy, whoever it is, to be selling these albums because for any reason, because I like it or not, you know, but yeah, there have been times that I've chosen not to buy albums and stuff because of the album cover. I just didn't agree with with it. It offended my sensibilities.
Okay.
Yeah, but a bunch of 14-year-olds bought it, so
Right.
they don't care
Yeah.
that they missed your purchase,
But
man.
for the
That's
wrong reasons, though. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
True though.
It sucks, but that's the case. But that's the market at large, writ large. That's us. That's the consumers.
That's mishitting the genre.
Yeah.
I think those 14-year-olds are really looking for a different genre and maybe a magazine that they're looking
Yes,
for.
yes, with a centerfold.
Right, right.
Yeah. Right. No, you're right. So that's why you'll find me quoting "I Love Lucy and the Honeymooners" a lot when I speak, because it's just such a wonderful type of writing, which again gave the audience some credit for being intelligent, because I think that audiences in those days were, I don't want to say they're more intelligent, because that would, I first of all, I'd have no proof of that. And second of all, it's a harsh thing to say, because there's plenty of intelligent people out there today, but they were schooled in a whole different agenda. Let's just put it that way. And it goes back to what we were saying before about the civics and the lack of it.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's just such wonderful humor. Those early days of television, and it wasn't reliant on poking fun at people or to that extent or sex.
Far more clever. It was far more clever writing.
Very clever.
than
Look
it
who was doing the writing.
punchlining.
The Woody Allens.
Yeah.
The who is a horrible person in real life, but he was a funny writer. The Neil Simons, the Larry Gelbarts, people like that who were the writers of those wonderful shows, the Carl Reiners.
Carl Reiner, definitely.
Yeah, and
That was Archie Bunker. I mean, how provocative, right? That's Carl Reiner, yeah.
it's Norman Lear.
Norman Lear wrote it, and Carl Reiner was Meathead or whatever.
Oh,
on
that's
the show.
Rob Reiner.
Rob Reiner, okay, yeah,
called
sorry.
Son.
Yeah,
Right,
that's what I'm
right.
confused.
Carl Reiner's still around and kicking in his 90s. But again, I just preferred, so my children understand that, and we kind of taught them that there's just a higher level of writing there. Even in a 30-minute sitcom of I Love Lucy, there's just so much more going on than I always tell the story that I was on a cruise ship. And, with a cruise ship, you don't have a lot of choices of television. And you're really not supposed to be watching television anyway, on a cruise ship. But, you get in for the end of the night, and I'm flipping the channel, and there's two broke girls, for some reason that they had. This is the lowest of the low, and fortunately it is now canceled.
But it didn't last long.
It lasted 7 years.
No, I didn't think it was that long.
No,
Was
I
it?
think it's about 6 or 7 years that show lasted.
I've only seen it like once or twice.
I was gonna say,
I will
you didn't
turn-
watch it that long yourself.
yeah.
But
That's what it is.
Well, you
yeah.
can only stand 6 or 7 minutes,
Yeah.
but if that much. But, you turn it on, and it is just one sex joke after another.
Yeah.
That's, who am I going to sleep with today? Who's going to be masturbating today? And things like that. Look at the size of her breasts. This is what we've become.
Yeah, that, and I was gonna mention that. That almost seemed like that show seemed like it was algorithmically written. Seriously,
You mean Al Gore wrote it?
No.
I thought you meant
as in
ET invented the-
they're running like some sort of statistics
Program.
going. Boob jokes. We need more boob jokes in this episode. Look at the like they're running it like like they're running a
we
stock
need
picture or
2.5 boob
something.
jokes.
But I think a lot of stuff has been written that way. But it kind of gets that happens too. But that's kind of the point, isn't it? Why has this happened? Because didn't used to be like this. If you like you said, if you go back and you look at like the 50s and 60s sitcoms and stuff, it wasn't until like I think the late 70s that this all started to turn, and it turned because there was a market for it.
Right.
And then that becomes the blueprint, and then sooner or later, but I think this is played out. I think it's
definitely
at
has
the
played
end of its life cycle. Like you can't put overt sex on a TV show anymore and guarantee yourself a high Nielsen rating
even
like you used to be able to because of Pornhub or whatever, YouPorn, all that kind of stuff, man. So it doesn't have the punch that it used to have.
Even with shows like that are very popular, like Game of Thrones and stuff, people have criticized the amount of sex and violence.
Unnecessary.
As unnecessary. And I would say
it doesn't
that
further
out of
the
most
plot
of what
line.
I've
Take it out.
Well,
Right,
I would say most of what I've seen on that show actually is relevant to the plot line.
Yep.
And since it's based on War of the Roses, you know, from like real life and stuff, you know, like that stuff is motivating a lot of the things going on in that movie in terms of plot, subplot, and all that. But I mean, still people are like, oh man, that's too much, you know. So I think you're right when you're saying it's played out. I think people are tired of seeing, and to some degree, I think
the extreme violence too. That keeps showing up.
Well, I think to some degree, technology is to blame for that. Now it's so easy to be graphic, and make it look real. Right. People are excited to do that, and, you know, because all the horror movies went from being scary to slashing.
Yes. Yeah. I can't enjoy a horror movie anymore like that.
There's no suspense. There's just people getting hacked up.
And it's not near as funny as watching people get ran over by bulls. Like when they're doing the running of the bulls and things.
Yes. He likes those fail blogs.
Yeah.
You know, talking about things. So people putting themselves in bad situations, getting messed up.
Right. Professor Cooperman, let me ask you, in the last 5 years, has there been any particular thing that you've done concerning the theater that you're most proud of, whether that's starting the festival or the theater itself, or a play that you've written and how you've executed, or a point that you've made? Is in that last 5 years, what do you think is your best accomplishment?
Well, I think definitely starting Stage Right Theatrics, because we are getting our name out there and we're getting known, and we're starting. You know, we were in American Theater Magazine back in November. That's a major publication. You know, they reached out to me. You know, so
something's resonating.
Something is resonating. So I'm very, very proud of that. As far as plays that I've written, you know, I'm actually trying to market a play right now that I wrote a few years ago, and it was a finalist in a Franklin County, Ohio playwriting scholarship competition. I was one of 3. They had about 40-something submissions, and I was one of the 3 finalists, but darn the luck I wasn't chosen for the scholarship of $5,000. But it's a play about one man's quest to kind of make it in the world of academia, but he can't because academia has become so corrupt. And, you know, it doesn't even talk that all this character talks about is that he wants to reach students and he wants to teach, and he doesn't say I'm a conservative, and he doesn't say that at all. But he is bogged down by political correctness and the destruction of the Western canon. You know, as a matter of fact, in one scene, he goes to a graveyard. He finds a graveyard in the school, and there's the tombstone that says Shakespeare, and there's a tombstone that says Truth, and he's like, my God, talk about allegory. Yeah. You know, he says, my God, he says, they've destroyed everything, you know. So I'm very proud of that play, and it was actually selected for something called the Broadway Bound Theater Festival in New York. And I was very pleased. I mean, it was the inaugural season of this company, and it was, you know, quite an honor to have the play selected out of, I'm sure, hundreds of submissions. However, it never went on in New York because, just a long story short, they wanted me to, you know, I have to produce the play myself. And I'm sorry, I just didn't have thousands to do that, you know. The 2 times I was involved in that playwriting, the New York New Works Playwriting Festival, you have to produce it yourself. The first time we did it was with a play called The Flower Stand, and that was, and the way we cut costs on that was the people in it were me and my daughter. And we just rehearsed in Columbus, and then we went out to New York and did it. And we did it.
Wow!
And that was a wonderful. I have to say that's something I was very proud of too, because there's my daughter who's a theater major at Wright State now, and she was on there with me, and we did that together. And I think it was a big moment for her too. She was even in the Wright State newsletter in her freshman year because she was going to New York to put on a play. And the second year, I used Ohio University Lancaster students in a 3-person play Instaurito. Yeah. And we did that. We rehearsed here, and then we went to.
Looked like they had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But you know, I can't. This play that I was mentioning, this has a larger cast. I can't afford to do that. So I told them, I said, the people you have selected must be independently wealthy. And they're saying, well, you just go to a crowdfunding site and get money. It's not that easy. No. You don't just put you know, hey, I'm going to New York and I need you to give me some money. The people are not willing to do that. Right. So I turned that down. But I'm very proud of that play, and I'm hoping that it will get produced. I may have to produce it myself. You know, there's a level of risk taking in doing this, but there's also a level of selfishness. It's also a level of I can't catch my breath. So yeah,
But also a level of being able to get it done the way you want it
I
done.
want it done.
Your
Yeah.
vision.
That's
That's
right.
exactly what happened with Lucas and Star Wars.
Oh,
Yeah. The majority of the work that was done after he reviewed it, he kind of had to come in and kind of take control of it all himself and guide it to get exactly what he was trying to get done. So they scrapped like a lot of the work and production that had been done.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and then he came in and kind of took control of it and got what he wanted. But after he did, it kind of showed everybody, and then from that point on, they were able to do it.
Yeah,
But
because
to get
they
the
were
initial vision
charting,
out.
and that's sort of you guys too. And not that theater doesn't exist, but in some ways you're sort of charting some unexplored waters
Absolutely,
here now.
absolutely.
Because it's been 40 years since you could say there was my personal opinion. It's been 40 years since you could say that there's been a significant conservative presence in theater and television.
What are
and
you
mass
hearkening
media.
back to?
I
Just
sort of
40
go
years?
back to like the Cecil B. DeMille type films
Okay.
and up through to probably like the sitcoms, the early sitcoms that were coming out. And then I think after that, the people's through the 70s, people's tastes changed. Things for decadence and different stuff kind of, the cocaine era and like
That's
all
right.
that
But
kind of
I
stuff.
also think this is forwarded by the media and by advertising.
Absolutely it is.
Because even,
Absolutely it
you
is.
hear about this. You think about the 1960s, the mid to late 1960s, and all you can think of are the hippies, right?
Yep.
Well, I have a brother and sister who were 18 and so in the 1960s.
And didn't get into
they
that
weren't in
culture
it,
at
and the
all, right?
majority of
Yep.
the country did
Did
not.
not.
Right.
But the
Yes.
media made it
Yes.
seem like we were all at
Yep.
Woodstock or
Yep.
at Haight-Ashbury.
Yes.
Smoking weed.
Yep.
So,
My mom wasn't like that either.
Nope.
Or my dad.
Nobody in my
Right.
family went through that I
No.
can think
Yeah.
of. Yeah, no, none.
So I do think a lot of, when we say about the tastes of Americans and I think that some of that is concocted by media and by
Yeah.
other entities that seek to make a profit. I can't speak to it very well because I don't know, but this is my guess.
What about this? How do you feel social media and technology in terms of communication have impacted the theater? Since a lot of technology is geared toward things other.
I know people.
I'm talking to him.
Oh, okay.
He just keeps wandering away.
Yeah, he
from
wants
the
me to
mic,
speak into the mic.
And I'm like,
okay.
get your face in the
You
mic.
gotta learn how to do these things.
I know, right?
If you want to be successful in this, you really need to do that.
Did you catch that, or do I need to say?
No,
anything?
you're good.
Okay.
No, you're just fading off. I keep hitting the cord.
Yeah. Okay. So
You see, he's got notes for me that he just points at.
Oh, okay.
So I'll be over here going,
Oh, okay. I saw that note and I wondered what does that mean?
yeah.
It's to him.
Okay.
He bounces his foot, and then the whole table starts shaking. So I just
right.
point at the note.
We
when
all
we're
think we're
talking.
talking with vibrato here.
See, now we have an in-studio guest. All of our dirty little secrets are
Right,
getting
right.
out
Coming
now.
out, yeah.
Everybody else is on the
Wait
phone.
till I write the play about this.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. So I know people who refuse to market their productions except through social media. They say they feel that the print is a waste of time, that no one reads printed newspapers anymore. I have to tell you, I know that I got people into that theater because of the work, the print media that I had been exposed to, and it's helped promote my work. But social media, I don't know that it's changed theater, or it may change theater to the extent that people are going to start incorporating it into plays. This is not social media per se, but it's an example. There's a play called Dead Man's Cell Phone by a playwright named Sarah Rule. She's kind of a big deal. All due respect, Sarah, if you're listening, I think you stink. But as a playwright,
Don't hold back.
okay,
now.
no, I'm not. I think she's a terrible playwright, and I've seen a number of her things. But Dead Man's Cell Phone is about how somebody can find the cell phone of a dead man, and kind of take on his personality through the contacts in the cell phone.
Yeah.
I think it has really smart implications. It's just a lousy play. So I think that social media has been very kind to me in getting the word out about theater, because you reach so many people who are not necessarily linked to theater. So what I mean by that is, I belong to a number of conservative Facebook groups. and you start sending out information. I always post on those sites that this is the theater, and you get people interested, and you get people liking your Facebook page. I have a Facebook page for Stage Right Theatrics, and all these people and people making comments like, who are these people? Well, there's these people out there in the great hinterlands who are interested in this kind of a thing. They're not on theater sites, but they're on politically friendly sites and things like that. So I use social media as a very good it does help with advertising. There's no doubt about it. And to reach out to I want the people beyond the boundaries of Columbus, Ohio, or even Ohio itself to know that we exist. So, I mean, that's a fairly traditional use of social media.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I also think that ultimately, like this Sarah Rule piece I said, we're going to see the incorporation of social media somehow in theater. I don't know whether we're going to get like a live feed or something like they do at debates, and it's going to become part of the play. It may even be happening now. I don't know. Some kind of performance art with it.
Yeah,
well,
we were talking with Stephen Sullivan, and he was talking about over the course of the Olympics, the last Olympics, he wrote a novel, and he had people that would write in and it would change in certain ways his plot or how things would occur and stuff. So
now just think about social media and theater, because theater is the most social of activities, of performances, and you could have something like that. Maybe a production changes based on the audience reaction on social media. I think that's maybe I better write this. It might be,
write it and or do it and incorporate it into a script that you write about.
Yeah. I think that would work. Yeah,
I think and we're still figuring out what this all means with social media. I think people are like, it's A or it's B. I don't think it's even begun to finish defining how it's going to define itself and what kind of impact it's going to have
or what ways you can use it.
Society.
Right. Well, we know that it has been used by a political class now, right? I mean, our president tweets.
Yeah. We have the first real-time president. Everybody's going to have they're going to have to get their head around that.
I have to say, I like that. I like that because, I mean, this is, how do you reach, what is it, 300 million people that we've got in this country? What's a good
330, I think.
330? Oh, went up since this morning.
Yeah, probably.
But how do you reach people like that and speak to the people? He does it. You don't have to love his message. But
and it's funny watching how it's redefining, because it was a very traditional mechanism before, right? You made a statement, that statement went to the press would release that, and then they would report on it, and that's how it went. Now, anybody, not just the president of the United States, but anybody can go straight past the traditional mechanisms right to the people and say, here's what I think, or here's what I really mean, or here's what I'm saying.
Right.
And forget all that interpretation shit. I'm saying it right to you, okay? Don't, and the press is like, I don't know what to do with this now, and they're all scrambling and trying to figure it out.
That's right. That's right.
Well, that's what's going on here. I mean, this podcast will be up tonight, tomorrow.
Yep.
And it'll be up and direct, and we'll go wherever we decide to place it. We've got people from Australia and France and where else? Scandinavia that have liked the
Mexico.
page and stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. Any Americans?
Oh, no, a few.
Mostly.
Most are here in the studio tonight. But, but we have a few. But yeah, I mean, but it's the directness of it. It's the directness of what you're saying and the lack of filter. And if there's been like one of the common themes that we've talked about with people, especially artists, is the ability, that direct ability to say what they mean and have enough time to express what they mean,
what they really mean, is still
and explain themselves and their philosophy
without being soundbited to death,
and then pushing it out into the world without any filter, without any agenda other than your own. A lot of the people that we talked to that were ex-employees from TSR, there had been attempts made by documentary film crews to interview these people and get this history. And inevitably, these 2 or 3 film crews ended up in IP court.
Oh wow!
Fighting over what they had recorded, and because it was an archive history of this stuff, right? Whereas when we've talked to these people, we've been able to get this podcast out that night, and there's no fighting over it. It's already released out into the world for everybody, and that's one of the things that I find interesting about today's social media and the direct connection it has with the artist is the ability for the artist to say what they intend and have the time to do so without being harassed by time limits or production people or censors or.
I do think there's a great danger, though. And the great danger is that when you give everybody a forum, you kind of lose the you don't separate the wheat from the chaff very easily.
No.
You know, what Warhol said, "We'll all be famous for 15 minutes," and he's I think he was very prescient when he said that. But yeah, we don't have any discernment between what's useful and what's not, what really does have an impact and what doesn't.
But that's
So I
just
worry
because
about
it's
that.
new, though, right? I mean,
It could
eventually
be.
we're going to develop those skills.
I think we've made a mistake, though, in believing that things like Facebook, Twitter is actually communication. I don't think it is.
Wow.
I don't think it's actually communication. I think it's like standing on the side of the road screaming at cars as they go by.
Yeah,
and you're
except-
calling that communication. I don't think that. I think this is communication.
This
I
better
think
be.
what we're doing is communication. But I think people have confused Facebook and Twitter and all of this shit as people talking to each other. Me being one of them. I
Okay.
did for years. But I actually don't think it is anymore.
How fascinating.
I think
How
it's.
fascinating.
I mean, I think a better analogy is standing on the side of an interstate screaming, whatever, don't vaccinate your kids or Donald Trump, or, you're screaming at people as they're going by.
Yeah.
You're not communicating with them. There's like,
I
what
see.
the frick is wrong with
I
that
see what
guy?
you're saying.
In this case,
This is food for thought. Yes, go ahead.
the quality in what we're deciding to do with this particular podcast and stuff, a lot of podcasts concentrate on just one thing. And that's what every episode is about. And we decided to be more diverse in what we were doing, and try to put more quality into the recording and all that. So I think when you talk about having a difficulty discerning with all of the types and forms of media around, I think it's becoming clear to people. I think that people are having an easier time, more and more, of distinguishing essentially what is shit and what's not.
I hope so.
When they look at a feed of podcasts that is the same repetitive thing over and over again, and it's being expressed by people who have maybe limited knowledge in that field or limited access to the people in that field, compared to something that's diverse and things of that nature, I think it's easier to separate this. And I think that we're picking up the skills necessary in our society to discern those things quicker.
I hope so. I hope you're right. What's great about the social media is we don't have the filter of the media telling us what to think.
Right.
So I think that is wonderful.
Which is good and bad, unfortunately.
I guess I see more bad than good. But
I didn't say it wouldn't be.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone has a voice, but should everyone have a voice?
Should everyone have a voice?
That's we're not asking that question.
Everybody should have a voice. You just shouldn't have to listen to all voices if you choose not to.
Everybody's at the same volume, right?
That's right.
Everybody's got their favorite channel,
kind of thing. So it all just gets so polluted. But I think as somebody that's into the actual structure of the art and cares about things like theater and things like that and quality, I think for someone that's on that side of the equation, I don't see anything but good things for those folks. Okay, because. Again, because of this, because all this derivative shit and all this lowbrow stuff is just getting. I think. It's
that's another thing too.
Now.
There's a lot of podcasts where they've got queued up like farts and things like that, and it's. And again, once you get into 5 minutes of that, where you're at.
Right.
Once you're in the 5 minutes of the conversations that we generally have on this show, it's like, you're not really sure.
So we did 2 hours.
We did.
Yeah.
And it went by very fast.
Yeah,
it always does.
I enjoyed this.
Me too.
And I appreciate the forum to just talk about, things and we covered a lot of good topics today.
I think so. Absolutely.
Theater was like one of them.
Well, and anything that's coming up that, new shows or things that you want to come back in and talk with us about.
Yeah,
I'd love to. I would love to
or
do that.
just
It's a lot of fun.
after you've had a show. And
Yeah.
Well, folks, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening. Give us some subscribes and likes down there, down below, so we can get to our 100 subscribers and get our custom URL. But we appreciate you spending time with us, and we'll catch you all next time.
bye.